There's a scene in Pretty Woman that almost every single person who has ever watched this movie has seen at least once. You know the one. Julia Roberts walks into that fancy hotel lobby wearing that jaw-dropping red dress, and the whole world seemed to stop. People talk about that dress all the time. They talk about her smile, her hair, her shoes. But here is the thing, nobody, and we mean almost nobody, noticed what was hiding right there in plain sight. A wardrobe mistake so big, so obvious once you see it, that it will completely change how you watch this movie forever. And the crazy part? It took years for people to finally catch it. So sit back, because today we are going to break down exactly what happened behind the scenes of one of the most iconic films ever made. And trust us, by the end of this, you will never look at Pretty Woman the same way again. Before we get into the mistake that slipped past millions of viewers, let us take a quick trip back to 1990. Pretty Woman hits theaters, and almost overnight, it becomes a phenomenon. The story is simple on the surface. A wealthy businessman named Edward, played by Richard Gere, meets a young woman named Vivian, played by Julia Roberts. He hires her to be his companion for a week of important business events. But somewhere in the middle of all that, something unexpected happens. They fall in love. Now that kind of story had been told before, but there was something about the way Julia Roberts lit up that screen that made audiences everywhere feel like they were watching magic happen right in front of their eyes. The movie grossed over $460 million worldwide, on a budget of just $14 million. Let that sink in for a second. That is not just a hit movie. That is a once-in-a-generation kind of success. But here is what most people never knew while they were busy falling in love with the story. Behind the cameras, things were messy. Things were chaotic. And in the middle of all that chaos, something slipped through the cracks that the editors, the directors, and the wardrobe team all somehow missed. Something that millions of viewers watched without ever realizing it was wrong. And when you finally see it, you are going to wonder how on earth anyone missed it for so long. Let us talk about that red jacket first, because this is where the story really starts to get interesting. There is a scene early in the movie where Vivian is out on the street, dressed in her working clothes, a tiny dress, those famous thigh-high boots, and a bold red jacket slung over her shoulders. That red jacket is important. It is one of the first things you see when you meet Vivian. It tells you everything about who she is before she ever says a word. It is confident. It is loud. It says, "I am here, and I am not hiding." Now here is the part that sounds almost too wild to be true. That jacket was not some carefully selected piece from a high-end costume designer. The wardrobe department did not plan it out weeks in advance. They did not source it from some exclusive boutique on Rodeo Drive. That jacket was bought off a random cinema usher on the street for just $30. Yes, you read that right. $30. The crew realized last minute that they did not have the jacket the script called for, panicked, spotted a cinema worker nearby wearing something close enough, and bought it off the person right there on the spot. And that $30 last-minute scramble became one of the most recognizable pieces of clothing in Hollywood history. But that jacket is not the mistake we are here to talk about. The real mistake is far more interesting than that. Now let us get into something that happened during the filming process that very few people have ever really pieced together. When you are making a movie, especially a big Hollywood production, there are people whose entire job is to make sure everything stays consistent from one shot to the next. They are called continuity supervisors. Their whole purpose is to make sure that if Julia is holding a glass of water in one shot, she is still holding that same glass in the next shot. If Richard is wearing a blue tie in one scene, he is still wearing that same blue tie when they pick up filming the next day. It sounds like a simple job, but movies are not filmed in order. They jump around. They film the ending before the beginning, sometimes. They do the same scene 10 times from 10 different angles. And in all of that jumping around, things slip through. Small things. Big things. And in Pretty Woman, one wardrobe detail slipped through in a way that, once you notice it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. Here is exactly what happened. There are multiple moments throughout the film where Vivian's outfits change in ways that do not match up between cuts. The most talked about one involves a breakfast scene that became so infamous in film history that it has been analyzed and debated by movie fans for decades. Vivian sits down to eat, and she is clearly holding a croissant. The camera cuts away for just a moment, then cuts back. And suddenly, the croissant is gone. In its place is a pancake, a completely different food item, already bitten into, as if it had always been there. Now, some people tried to explain this away by saying maybe she just put the croissant down and picked up the pancake. But no, when the camera comes back to Vivian, the pancake already has a bite taken out of it. That means somewhere in the editing room, two completely different takes were stitched together without anyone catching that the food had changed entirely. The continuity supervisor either was not watching closely enough, or they just hoped nobody would notice. And for a while, nobody did. But fans eventually caught it, and it became one of the most talked about editing blunders in major Hollywood movie history. But even that is not the moment we are really building toward today. Because while the croissant to pancake switch is funny and embarrassing, the wardrobe mistake that went unnoticed for years is on a completely different level. This one involves something that was visible in one of the most iconic, most replayed, most analyzed scenes in the entire film. It was right there, in front of everyone, for years, and nobody caught it. To understand the full weight of this, you have to understand just how many eyes were on this movie. Pretty Woman was not just a popular film. It became a cultural touchstone. It was studied. It was parodied. It was referenced in other movies and TV shows. Film students watched it. Fashion students watched it. People who love cinema watched every frame of it with intense focus. And still, this mistake sat there quietly, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to finally look closely enough. The mistake is connected to one of the most emotionally powerful scenes in the movie, and it involves the way a costume was prepared versus how it actually appeared on screen. The wardrobe team had very specific plans for how Vivian should look in certain key moments of the film. Every button, every seam, every hemline was supposed to tell a story about where she was in her emotional journey. Costume designer Marilyn Vance was deeply intentional about every choice. She fought hard, for example, to make sure Vivian wore that famous red dress instead of the boring black dress the studio originally pushed for. Vance understood that clothing in this movie was not just clothing. It was character development. It was storytelling. So when a wardrobe element appeared incorrectly on screen, it was not just a small oops. It was a crack in the very foundation of what the costume design was trying to communicate. And here is what made it even harder to catch. The mistake did not look wrong at first glance. It looked fine. It looked intentional. It blended in with everything else happening in the scene. The lighting was beautiful. The performances were captivating. And the music was pulling you into the emotion of the moment. Your brain was busy processing all of that at once, so it simply did not flag the wardrobe detail as being out of place. That is actually how the best movie mistakes hide. They do not look like mistakes. They look like choices. And so for years, viewers accepted it as a choice. They never questioned it. They just moved on and kept watching. It was not until online fan communities started doing deep dive frame-by-frame breakdowns of the film that someone finally noticed something was off. Once the first person pointed it out, it spread quickly. People went back and rewatched the scene, and suddenly they could not stop seeing it. The comment sections filled up. The film forums lit up. Movie buffs started debating how something like this could have survived the entire editing process without anyone catching it. The answer, honestly, is the same answer it always is with these things. People were human. They were tired. They were working fast. They were focused on 100 other things at once. And one small detail fell through the cracks. What makes Pretty Woman so fascinating as a case study is that this film was made under really unusual circumstances from the very beginning. The script was originally a much darker story, not a romantic comedy at all. It was titled $3,000 and was written as a gritty drama about a prostitute in Hollywood. When Disney got hold of it and brought in director Garry Marshall, everything changed. The tone shifted. The ending changed. Multiple versions of the script were written. A revolving door of casting choices came and went before Richard Gere and Julia Roberts were finally locked in. And all of that chaos during pre-production created a kind of scramble energy that carried through into the actual filming. Things were figured out on the fly. Decisions were made quickly. And in that kind of environment, mistakes happen. There is also the matter of just how hard that final fire escape scene was to shoot. The iconic ending, where Edward climbs up the fire escape with roses to rescue Vivian, required 9 full takes to get right. Richard's suit got dirty from all the stair climbing. Julia's shoes kept slipping. A neighbor started playing opera music loudly at the wrong moment. Pigeons decided to fly through the shot. 9 takes. And every time they had to reset, someone had to make sure every single wardrobe detail was exactly where it was before. It is almost remarkable that more mistakes did not make it into the final cut. The lesson here is not that Pretty Woman is a badly made film. It is the opposite. Pretty Woman is a masterpiece that was assembled under genuinely difficult conditions by a team of incredibly talented people who were working under enormous pressure. And somehow they pulled off something timeless. The wardrobe mistakes that slipped through are not evidence of carelessness. They are evidence of humanity, of the beautiful, messy, imperfect reality of what it actually takes to make a movie that lasts forever. And maybe that is why we love this film so much. Not because it is perfect, but because underneath all the glamour and the gorgeous costumes and the fairy tale romance, it is real. It is human. It makes mistakes and keeps going anyway. Just like Vivian herself. Now that you know what to look for, go back and watch it again. See how many things you catch this time that you missed before. And drop what you find in the comments below. Because if you caught something we have not talked about yet, we genuinely want to know. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe so you never miss another deep dive just like this one.